Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I had a whole bunch of people send me this article, and they knew it would catch my attention. It's from Jalopnik. My buddies over at Jalopnik. I wrote for Jalopnik for a couple of years, and I still get comments from time to time. People contact me and say, Steve, I just saw an article you wrote for Jalopnik back in the day. And Elizabeth Blackstock wrote this one, and it was sent to me by a whole host of people: Greg, Gayla, Daniel, Peter, Ed, and Philip. An apartment complex in Ohio is towing cars for being ugly. Now, I don't know if that's the exact term they're using for it, but it's not a bad description. In Ohio, the Montana Valley Apartments complex is towing or threatening to tow, take your pick, cars parked in their lot that don't meet appearance standards. Westwood's Local 12 news station reports the story, and the story calls it PWP, or parking while poor, and it results in the complex towing 1 or 2 cars a month, but threatening to tow 3 or 4 cars per day. So in other words, they only break down and tow a car once or twice a month, but they threaten a lot of other people based on how the car looks. And so, for instance, a man named Dennis Day has a 2001 Honda. He was surprised when the other day he received a notice on his windshield after visiting a friend at this apartment complex. So he doesn't live there. He just stopped by to visit a friend, parked his car in the parking lot, went inside, visited a friend, came back outside. And he says, basically, I just ran into the apartment to drop off a few boxes, came out with a sticker on my car saying that my car did not meet their high standards. Now, there ain't nothing more annoying than someone who slaps a sticker on your car. The thing underneath the windshield wiper, that's okay. A sticker is annoying. And a lot of people do this to be annoying. And they'll take a sticker and they'll put it right on the windshield directly in front of the driver. Heaven forbid you do that to my car, and I see you do it. But, like I said, these people think they can do that because, well, the manager of the apartment complex probably has his marching orders. And they probably say, put the sticker on the windshield to where they'll see it, but it'll annoy them so they won't do it again. That's a dangerous game to play, my friends. The notice stated that due to damage on his car, it would be towed if he didn't move it within 24 hours. Now, of course, if his story checks out the way he says, it wasn't there for very long. You'd think the complex would save on its stickers by waiting an hour or two, instead of just, hey, there's a car, quick, run out and slap a sticker on it. He said it was a huge slap in the face. The Montana Valley Apartments manager noted that the complex does not allow cars with rust, dents, flat tires, or bad paint to sit in front of the complex. And while there's certainly something to be said about towing a car that's been immobile for several weeks, tenants here are arguing that the standards are entirely unfair because it doesn't allow them to have time to get the repairs, and especially these days when it's difficult if you're living from paycheck to paycheck. Folks have asked the manager what's supposed to happen to people who can't afford a nice car, and she responded, "We understand the policy is not for everyone," and left it at that. And Elizabeth Blackstock signed off by saying this seems especially cruel in the midst of a pandemic when many people are still left unemployed and when the cost of purchasing even a used car is skyrocketing. Well, and there's a couple of things going on here. We have to talk about this. The first question you're going to ask me, I hope, I'm a lawyer. Steve, is this legal? Is this legal? Well, the first thing to understand is that an apartment complex is private property. It's owned by a private entity. Now, if this is government housing, it would be different, and there'd be laws that govern that. And government housing would probably have statutes and regulations right down to how wide the stripes are in the parking lot. But I'm going to assume this is a privately owned apartment complex. Somebody put the money up, built an apartment complex, renting out the units, and is making money in a for-profit enterprise with a privately owned apartment complex. So the parking lot is privately owned. So the person or entity that owns that has the right to do with that what they wish, as long as it's legal. And I suspect, for instance, that the building codes and so on in that municipality probably require them to have a parking lot, meaning that it'll say if you have an apartment complex or other residential structure, you must have so many parking spaces available for the tenants there. So, for instance, I know people who've lived in downtown areas where they live in a unit above a business. And they're very, very picky about where you park your cars and how many spots there are for the people who live there because there aren't that many. So let's suppose there's 100 apartments and the local code might require them to have 150 parking spaces for those 100 apartments. And so they're required to have that. But beyond that, there's not going to be a whole lot of regulation on this. And so you, as a tenant, most likely have a right to park there. Now, you might say, but Steve, what? I'm just doing the math for you so you see where I'm coming from. When you sign a lease to rent an apartment or any place, it's going to come with terms and conditions. And they are going to say, you pay us money. We'll put a roof over your head. We will supply and furnish certain things, such as, windows and doors that lock and so on. And that's what you get. And along with that, it's probably going to say you also get a parking space. It might not be reserved, but you have the right to park a car. It might say you have the right to park 2 cars. Okay? If there's a carport, they might say you have the right to park 1 in the carport and 1 elsewhere. There's all kinds, but that's going to be regulated by the lease, which is a contract. So if you lived in this apartment complex, you would then pull out your lease and look at it and say, what does it say? Does it say anything about the rules and regulations that you've got to abide by when parking in their parking lot? And if they've got rules and regulations that are somehow contained in that contract, they've got the right to do this. Now, it is a little harsh, but I'm just going to, for a split second, and I don't do this just for the fun of it, but I'm going to point out that there are situations where this goes too far the other direction. I've seen an apartment complex, you drive by, and there's some guy who's got his car up on blocks, and he started a transmission job and got stuck or had to go off to war, or who knows. But there's a car up on blocks that's partially disassembled. It ain't running. It ain't plated. It's just sitting there. And it's taking up a parking space. And you can understand why the apartment complexes go, we don't like that. And in fact, many municipalities have got rules against having vehicles like in your own driveway if they're not registered, meaning that the car is not even legal to drive on the road. It's just sitting there. It might run, but it's got no plate on it. Some cities have got rules that say if you have an unplated, unregistered vehicle in your driveway for too long, we can come by and tag it as an eyesore. And you'll notice that doesn't say anything about how it looks. That's just the fact that it doesn't have a plate on it. They're assuming that there's a greater proportion of vehicles out there that aren't running and aren't plated because they are eyesores. But that's another thing for another day. So here we are back to a private apartment complex that has a rule that says we're not going to let vehicles sit on our lot, whether they're tenants or not. They can be visitors. And also, it doesn't matter if they're plated, they can run all day long. The fact of the matter is that the car cannot have rust, dents, flat tires, or bad paint. Now, I can tell you right now what some of your problems are going to be with this. Those are all very, very vague statements. So if you expect anyone to follow rules, the rules have got to be clear and posted someplace. So if you moved into this apartment complex and said, by the way, just to let you know, we have rules about what type of cars you can park out here. Here are the rules. Okay, they should let you know that before you move in, but you get these rules, right? And you're reading the rules, and the rule says your car can't have rust. In Ohio, in the Midwest, cars with rust are quite common. I'm certain that some cars are manufactured with rust already on them. In fact, there have been stories recently about vehicles that do. But with rust, just a little spot of rust, a big chunk of rust that's popped through the paint, or rust on a chrome part. I have a bumper hitch on one of my Ford Explorers that if it's not used for a while, it actually gets a little bit of rust on it. Would that not be allowed in the parking lot because it has rust on it? And also, what's bad paint? Bad paint. Is that a car that's all in primer but hasn't been painted yet? Or is this a car that's got paint peeling off of the surface because of a delamination issue? There was a time when American car makers were making cars without using primer, and in the right conditions, the paint would delaminate and come off in sheets. You'd see these cars going down the road with just big sheets of paint missing. So you buy one of those cars, you get a great deal on the car. The car runs great, but it looks kind of weird. You can't park that car here because it's got bad paint. So I'm just questioning it. I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong here. Flat tires, I understand. Because if your car's got a flat tire, you should get it fixed. And I understand you say, but Steve, what if I can't afford to? Well, at the point a car gets a flat tire that doesn't get fixed, that's when it starts sinking into the ground, figuratively speaking. When I was growing up, my brothers and I would refer to old things as being old and stuck in the ground. Old and stuck in the ground. And so if something was old and stuck in the ground, it meant that it had been there a long, long time and was probably never going to leave. So when you see a car with a flat tire for a couple of days, you're thinking, okay, it's old and stuck in the ground. And then finally, of course, dents. Some vehicles, you might get a great deal on a vehicle that's got a dent in it. You tell me I got to get the dent fixed just to park in your wonderful parking lot. Depends how bad the dent is. Again, it's not defined. So legally, they can probably do this, especially if they've notified the tenants that these rules exist. They ought to post the rules for visitors so that a visitor doesn't come out and find a sticker on his windshield or her windshield. Because I can tell you right now, again, like I said, if you slapped a sticker on one of my vehicles that was in your lot for 5 minutes, you wouldn't want that to happen, my friends. Just trust me, you wouldn't want that to happen. So this is the Montana Valley Apartments. However, the apartment complex in Ohio is in fact towing cars for being ugly. Now, again, they only tow 1 or 2 a month, but they threaten to tow a lot more, including people who just visit for a few minutes. So, crazy story. Elizabeth Blackstock wrote it for Jalopnik, Greg, Gayla, Daniel, Peter, Ed, and Philip. Send them to me. Thanks a lot. Questions or comments, put them below. Those. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. By and large, language is a tool for concealing the truth.